What's up, everyone? Welcome back to another episode of The Opportunity. I'm your host, Greg Elfrink, and today I am speaking with the Dom Wells of Onfolio. I've been friends with Dom for a very long time. I've seen him sell his first business, and I've seen him now acquire around 40 businesses. Really cool story with how he started Onfolio. We actually did a podcast with Dom a while back where if you want like more of the founding story of Onfolio, we'll try to link that in the show notes. This one, I really wanted to focus on another detail with Onfolio now that it's been some time, mostly talking about how his acquisition criteria has changed over time, his initial investment thesis, which I think is very intriguing to see that evolution. The other thing that I think is fascinating is how he hires CEOs. And I think this is something a lot of entrepreneurs can benefit from because the number one skill in my view for growing a business is not marketing, it's not sales, it's not being a good coder, it's delegating. And if you can delegate the growth of your business, such as to a CEO effectively, that allows you to move mountains. And at this point, I think Dom says he's hired around 10 CEOs. His 4 CEOs are currently active working with Onfolio's companies. And I think this is awesome. I think more entrepreneurs, as you grow, should consider really adding in a C suite, obviously, once you're ready. Anyways, this is an awesome chat with Dom. Always good catching up with him. There will be links, of course, at the end for you to connect with Dom. Enough of me talking. Let's get into the show. I'll see you on the other side. All right. I got my good buddy Dom Wells here. Dom, I'm excited to have you back on. We had you on like a few months ago, maybe 8, 10 months ago, something like that, I feel. But I've been following all your stuff on LinkedIn, and I think it's really cool to see all the growth you're doing. But for everyone in my audience who's not familiar with you somehow, can you give us a brief overview of what you do and where you're at in the world?
Sure, yeah. I'm the CEO and founder of Onfolio. We're a publicly traded company that acquires online businesses, already profitable businesses. We went public about just over a year ago, August of 2022, for anyone who's listening to this in the future. And yeah, our main thing is finding businesses that are already profitable, kind of in that 1 million EBITDA SDE range, where a founder maybe has built it up to a level that presents an opportunity for them to make some life-changing money on an exit, and or they kind of have to learn some new skills to figure out how to take that business to the next level. And so some founders take that opportunity and other founders decide to exit and move on to something else. And so that's kind of where we come in and take over the business.
Awesome, man. Yeah, I love your business model. You were one of the like first people that really started doing this, at least in our space, from what I saw. Like, there was a couple others, but not like you. So, since you guys went public, and just in general, since you guys started, how many acquisitions have you guys made now?
Since we went public, we made four.
Four.
Yeah, we made three in October 22 and one in January, February 23. In total, Onfolio started out as a company that helped others to make acquisitions. So maybe someone, like for example, someone wants to buy a website of Empire Flippers, but they don't know how to do due diligence, or they just have no desire to run the business afterwards. They would hire us, and we would help them identify a business on Empire or on some of the other places, help do due diligence, and so on. And so, if you include all of those acquisitions, I think probably I've been involved in about 40 by now. And then Onfolio ourselves have probably made about 10. So we made a few before going public, and then yeah, those four since the IPO, and those four are significantly larger as well. So our revenue was about 1.2 million when we went public. So very 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 small revenue for a
Mm.
company that goes public. And now our revenue is tracking just shy of 6 million. So you can kind of see how those four we made since the IPO are significantly larger than anything we did before.
Oh, Dom, only 600% growth. What are you doing, man? No,
Yeah,
that's
we
awesome.
quintupled our revenue basically. Yeah.
I know your criteria has changed. Like you said, when you first started out, I remember you helping basically investors, kind of similar to what we do now with Web Street in a sense. And you guys have pivoted pretty dramatically, not just in that model, but in the businesses you kind of target now. So maybe tell me a bit about that story, like what your original thesis was with your holdco, and now what kind of businesses Onfolio is looking to acquire.
Yeah, I mean, my bread and butter was SEO, content sites,
Yeah.
affiliate sites, that kind of thing. So that's what we did first, because when you start spending other people's money, you should really focus on what you know. And so probably our first 20 to 25 transactions were content sites, and we did a couple of agencies as well, because Onfolio itself was an agency and my business before Onfolio was an agency, so I actually understood them. And then I think it was throughout 2020, really, we started just getting a bit of a bad feeling about content sites as an acquisition. And it was because every Google update, you would see content sites losing their positions in the SERPs and either being replaced by those kind of newspaper sites like New York Mag and
Outlook
the
India.
ones. Well, Outlook India, I don't know about back then, but yeah, the sites that are
Well,
now basically,
nowadays it's
well,
crushing it.
the parasite SEO sites, yeah.
Yeah.
And also e-commerce was starting to take the place of affiliate sites in the SERPs. And so we really started pivoting away. And then I think December 2020, there was a huge Google update, which really screwed a lot of affiliates. And we kind of shrugged it off because we were like, yeah, we've still got some content sites and they got hit, but we actually are already moving away from that. We bought an e-commerce business in December 2020, November 2020. We bought Outreach Mama, a link building agency, in September 2020. So when that happened, it was a bit painful, but we didn't have an existential crisis because we were kind of like, yeah, content sites are not good businesses to buy. They're good businesses to own, but not good businesses to buy. So, now with ChatGPT and LLMs and stuff, I think that's even more the case. But yeah, we had already moved away before the kind of AI revolution that started at the end of last year and throughout this year. So now
Yeah.
we focus on agencies, because actually whenever we look back at our historical performance, our agencies always have the best ROI, and they don't really need any additional cash injections after you've bought them. They might need the occasional like 10K increase in marketing spend or website revamp or something, but compared to say an e-commerce business where you're constantly putting money back into them, agencies just cash flow really well. But we also like WordPress plugins and we like online courses. Our biggest business is an online course. So basically everything that's kind of not a content site or an FBA business.
Yeah. Well, you're hurting my soul with those two, Dom, because
It's
that's
like your
that's the
biggest
main
inventory.
things we sell. So everyone in my audience, do not listen to Dom.
I
No,
think
I want to
just
double
to
click.
save
I
some
want to.
grace, I think the individual buyer is probably fine, but like trying to operate a portfolio of content sites at
Yeah.
scale is much harder.
I want to double click on two things you said there. So the content site and the fact you like agencies. So on the content site thing, like I don't disagree with you. I think AI is a scary time to be a content site buyer, and Google is always a scary time. But I do think, and you can tell me if you think this is wrong with your experience, I do think content sites are a really good first time buy for a person who's brand new to business buying because there's not that many moving parts. But in my opinion, and I tell this to everyone who buys a content site if they ever ask me, like, I think they should try to focus on not being just a content site. Like I look at Kevin Spirited with Epic Gardening, right? Like he turned his basic garden of Amazon affiliate site into a massive e-commerce company, right? Like, and I feel like a lot of SEOs in the content space, they have the best traffic, but they're doing the least with it. So like I always try to get people to like think beyond just like the basic affiliate model there. Is that kind of your thoughts too? If someone wanted to buy a content site, kind of de-risk it and really grow it?
Yeah, I think I would think of a content site more of like a traffic asset than
Yeah,
a business these days. And I'm quite bullish on audience and on community. And so there's a guy on Twitter called Greg Eisenberg who, obviously
great
has
first
a
name.
fantastic first name, yeah, and a pretty decent second name as well. But
Eisenhorn
I
is
think
a
his
good name for Warhammer 40k, which I know you and I both like. So props to him.
yeah, so his Twitter is just at Greg Eisenberg. I'll let you guys figure out how to spell it, but he's got a lot of stuff right now about building communities. And the basic idea is, you build a following, could be using social media, could be well, I think social media or Reddit or something, and then you convert that following to a newsletter, and you convert that newsletter to a free community, and then that community becomes a paid community, and then a paid community launches its own products based on what the audience is kind of, hey, can somebody build this for us, that type of thing. And a content site really is just like skipping the first part of building the audience, but it also is making you money. And so the risk with buying a content site, this is why I say content sites are great businesses to own but not necessarily to buy. The risk for us with buying a content site is you could buy it and then there's a Google update the next day and you've lost 50% of your traffic. Whereas with other businesses, it's less. There's other risks with other businesses, but stuff that
Right,
maybe you
right.
have a bit more control over. But if you can buy a content site or build a content site and, yeah, like you say, turn it into a media empire or an e-commerce brand, or, once there was a guy who had a YouTube channel where he would basically show people different builds of fish tanks and like the hydroponics and or I guess it's
Aquaponics,
aquaponics or
yeah.
something. Yeah, yeah.
I
And
know a strange
the
amount about this for some reason.
yeah, yeah, and all he would do is be like, "Here's how you can decorate your tank." Oh, aquascaping, I think it's called. And then from his YouTube channel, he would link people to the ugliest Shopify site you've ever seen, where he just sold some of those props. Like, here's a house for your fish, or here's a Christmas tree that can go in your fish tank, and here's how you create a seasonal landscape. And by the way, I sell all these materials on my Shopify site, and you click on it, and it's like something that was abandoned in 2001. It's like bright green, like I don't know what the color code is, but it's probably got
Blindingly lime.
PUKE in the letters, and it's like it's bright green, it's ugly AF, and it's like people just go there. They're like, yeah, cool. There's the house I wanted to buy, and they buy it. And I think he was making like 80 grand a month or something, and that's probably revenue. But he was drop shipping this stuff from China, and it shows what you can do when you just have a little bit of creativity. From you have an audience and you can sell them stuff yourself instead of just trying to make money from Mediavine or like Ezoic or Amazon affiliate or something. So I'm very much in favor of content when you realize that content is not really necessarily the business itself. It's like a traffic asset.
Yeah, my view on SEO has become more and more like as everything gets more optimized to be kind of the same. Like everyone's using like Page Optimizer Pro, Surfer, Neuron, right? And so there's the sameness that everyone's creating that's just like slightly more optimized than the previous guy. Is like what the aim is because Google already tells you what they want, so you just follow what they're showing, right? So more and more, I feel like SEO content is just like a long-winded ad at this point. Like once you're ranking, like the point of it is to get the traffic in and then sell them on something else. Like oh, join our list or go to this super interesting like thought leadership piece. Depending on what you're doing. But I agree with you on Mediavine and affiliate. I think that's the lowest on the food chain as far as revenue goes, and there's so many more creative ways to monetize once you get a really good decent amount of traffic coming in. Speaking of the audience thing, I was talking to a guy who wants to build a course with this influencer, and the course is in this super nerdy niche. And he asked me because I'm into the hobby, like, hey, would people buy this? Like, well, usually people only experienced people would buy it, but by the nature of who this influencer is, like, because they're like a kind of a famous comedian, so they make it really funny and entertaining. Like if you got him to do it, there would be people who have no interest in the hobby at all who would still buy it because they think it would be interesting to hear his perspective. And that's just the power of that influence you mentioned.
Yeah, that's pretty interesting.
Yeah. It's like Neil Gaiman with his masterclass. I have so many non-writer friends who bought that.
Yeah, yeah, exactly. Yeah, that's cool. I think that's the right way to think about it. I've been starting to thinking about like tweeting more content about. I think there's a lot of people out there that are kind of stuck as SEO affiliates. There's like Mediavine bloggers who are they've crushed it for so long just doing good content, and they've built all these hard skills like SEO and keyword research and affiliate and copywriting, and for a long time directing those skills into building niche sites was the way to go. And I think a lot of those people would do better if they kind of leveled themselves up into building something bigger. And it could be pivoting those skills into a different business model. It could be learning how to take your niche site and build it into something bigger. And this is what Matt Diggody's asked me to kind of talk about at Chiang Mai SEO as well, because I just think a lot of us got into niche sites because it was easy, and that's
Mhm.
the wrong way. That's kind of why Google's got an axe to grind against niche site people. And they've kind of tarnished everyone with that brush. Like, there are people that are into niche sites for the right reasons, but most of us did it because we were like, I can just use Longtail Pro and build some PBNs and I'll make some money. And
Easy. This other
and
site's gonna
a
be
lot of those
off the
people,
hook.
yeah, I mean, it was never that easy because you're still competing with
Right.
other link builders and stuff, but it was way easier. And now I don't think that's necessarily, if somebody said to me, I want to get started building online business, what would you recommend? I probably wouldn't recommend that they start that way. I would recommend that they, like, I don't know what I would recommend. I'm still trying to figure that out, but I don't think it's the path people should go down anymore. And so I think it should be around trying to find ways to build an audience and then monetize that audience by building a community or a media brand or something like that. And so I want to try and explore this a little bit more with my own like content and stuff that I'm talking about. But anyway, that's why we don't buy content sites anymore.
Well, get to double click into the second part of that about agencies. When people ask me what kind of business they should start, I always recommend a B2B service because I think, like, if you have some hustle and as long as you don't mind like selling, you can make money like in the first week if you're grinding at it hard. So I always recommend services, and agencies is a natural fit for a marketer. But a lot of people don't like buying these. So I'm very curious on your perception of buying an agency. A lot of people, when they look at buying an agency, they're afraid, and rightfully so in a lot of cases, that they're just buying a book of business and the person that has all the power and the relationships in that business is leaving because that's the owner. And like, there's no real asset in their view. So tell me a bit about why you like agencies and why this isn't completely right.
I think it's right for probably 80% of agencies. And that's where the opportunity exists for us. Because if we can figure out the agencies where that's not the case, the alpha for us is that we can buy these businesses with very little competition and potentially paying less than we would pay for something else. The other difference is we know how to run agencies and we understand how to grow them. Now, the biggest reason we'll pass on an agency is exactly what you've said. Like, sometimes it's not really an agency; it's a person with 10,000 Twitter followers selling a service. And some of our link building agencies are essentially just a website with a spreadsheet on the back end that resells links, and that's fine because that's what the clients come to us for. But if you understand agencies, you're able to see what is a real agency and what isn't. The other thing is, what makes an agency an excellent business for a beginner to start with is, like, exactly as you've just described, that you can make money straight away if you don't mind doing sales or marketing and a little bit of hustle. You can get clients. But that also is where most people run into problems because they are terrible at operations. They
Yeah.
maybe inadvertently lie to their clients about what it is they're selling. They,
Especially on the
it's
guarantees and the risk reversal kind of offers you see in the
it
marketing space.
yeah, thanks a lot, Hermosi. But there's a ton of, it's very, very rare that I hire an agency that doesn't disappoint me. And
Same.
when I do, I'm like, can I buy you? um, because a good agency is very good. You get a lot of repeat business, you get a lot of referrals. What also happens is CMOs who hire those agencies tend to move around a lot. And so there's always new companies coming to your agency because the person who hired you before has moved companies and wants to hire you for the new company.
Yeah.
But the old company maybe still uses you until they get a new CMO who likes their old company.
It changes everything up. Yeah.
So when you do it right, you get so much traffic, like, and so many sales. Like, look at Smash Digital, for example, like Travis Jameson's business. They get so much business just from referrals and word of mouth, just because they do the hard work and they're a solid agency. And Travis is 100% not involved in that business. He's somewhat the face of it, but he's not really, because if you said, To those of us who don't know Travis, just indulge me a bit here. But if somebody said, "What does Travis Jameson do?" you wouldn't say, "Oh, he runs an SEO agency." He does a ton of different things, and one of the things is he owns an SEO agency. But if somebody says, "What SEO agency should I use?" there will be a ton of people who want to use Smash. And so that would be a fantastic agency to buy because it doesn't rely on the founder for sales, and it gets a ton of word of mouth, a ton of referrals. But at the same time, it also has its own sales pipeline. You've got Carl who's going around like throwing SEO events and networking and getting sales. And then they also sponsor newsletters and stuff. So there's a bunch of businesses out there like that where, yeah, you have to kiss a ton of frogs, but eventually you'll get a prince or a princess. And once you've got those businesses, they're wonderful. And they are also very anti-fragile as well, because, for example, an SEO agency, let's say it's a link building agency, maybe 5 years ago it sold PBN links, and then 3 years ago it sold sponsorship links, and then 2 years ago it sold like niche edits or something, and now it's going to start doing Harrow links. And
Digital PR.
people is going to do digital PR next week, and people are always going to come to that agency and spend money because to some extent they're like, I just need links, you tell me what the best ones are to buy. And an agency can pivot very well, and ideally they have retainer clients as well, so there's recurring revenue. I hope I haven't just created a ton of competitors to buy agencies, but that's why
Well,
we like them.
I I'm glad that you're talking about it, because one of the things I would love to do for Empire Flippers is sell more agencies. And like, I think agency owners, they tend to like overvalue themselves like a typical seller does. Like, that's very common, right? But the seller overvaluing what they're worth, but they also don't stop to think about what their business really is. Like, I had a person reach out to me the other day. They wanted to sell their agency, and I was asking, well, how big is your team? What's your revenue? And like, oh, it's just me. I'm just selling the website. Like, oh, well, that's a bit different, right? Like, you can still sell a website if it has good SEO juice, but it's not the same as selling a business. So
Good
you
business
mentioned
to own, but not a good business to buy.
yeah, you mentioned two like things on the agency. So not founder reliant on the acquisition channels, which I agree with, and then having monthly retainers. When you're valuing an agency that you're looking at, do you look at like the churn of the clients to make that valuation? So instead of looking at like the 12-month average, let's say their churn is 10 months, are you valuing those contracts on that 10-month, or like how do you go about valuing an agency when you're looking at it?
Yeah, it's about not a lot of agencies at the size that we're buying don't have that much retainer. So maybe like 20% of their revenue is retainer. So
Oh, wow.
that instinctively makes it easier, or inherently makes it easier. But sure, yeah, where there's retainers, then you're going to be like, well, did somebody pay annually for this? You've already taken the money and we need to fulfill it. Or, like, is it a monthly thing? Is there a contract, like a term length and stuff like that? But the other thing we're looking at is the concentration of clients. So when we bought Content Elect, which is interestingly, it was a content agency, but its SEO services are really taking off. So now we've got four link building agencies. But
So
there was
much
a
digital
large,
PR.
there was a, they do really good Harrow links, but there was a large, I think, let's say the revenue was 500K a year, something like that. Don't quote me on that, but maybe 300K of the revenue was like fairly well distributed, but 200K was from like three clients. And so that was a bit of a concern for us. So we basically said to the seller, we're nervous about this. If those clients leave, the business makes a lot less. We still like it, but we don't want to have paid too much, blah, blah, blah. And the seller was like, yeah, I get that. I can stay on board and help, or something like this. And where we ended up was basically we said we can do an earn out based on kind of like carving out those high concentration clients. So if they leave tomorrow, we'll pay this for the business. But if they stay, then we'll pay you more because you deserve more, or we'll just pay you like a number in between, kind of no questions asked. So I think basically it was like, we'll pay you 700K and then like 1.1 million if the clients stay for 1 year, which is a little bit hard for the seller because he didn't have that much control over what we did with the business, so we could have
Of
driven
course.
the clients away. But there's always trust with an earn out. or we can just give you 850K all in, no questions asked. Well, I mean, we did all the due diligence and stuff, but yeah, like 850K all in. And then if all your clients do leave, maybe we've paid a tiny bit too much. And he just went for 850K. I think he just wanted to get the deal done, and it was still a good deal for him. And so he took that. But what that did for us was basically really removed a lot of the risk of the concentration risk of the clients, because we were like, okay, if the clients leave, not a big deal. We haven't paid for them. But if they stay, then, great. And the other thing we looked at was, if the founder is paying themselves a salary, how much is it going to cost to replace them, and things like that. And there's a business we're looking at right now where there's a founder and a CEO, and the CEO wants to stay, and the founder will probably keep 10% or something like that. So for us, that's a huge. We would pay more for that kind of business. Well, maybe not, because they might be listening to this. But
Don't worry,
I was
no
like,
one listens to this
don't
podcast, Dom.
publish
It's
this.
just me and the EF team here.
But no, yeah. Let's hold off on publishing this for 7 months. But no, we would theoretically pay more for that business, because you can always guesstimate how much it's going to cost to replace a founder, and then you can build a pro forma around that and be like, okay, well, if the new CEO is probably going to cost 10 grand a month, then the new profit of the business is probably going to be this. But you don't know if you can get a CEO for 10 grand a month, and you don't know if the business is going to decline while they're getting up to speed or whatever. So it's all guesswork. Whereas when there's a business where the CEO is already in, then, happy days. And so these are the things that we look at, probably more than we look at the churn and the recurring revenue. But those things, of course, matter as well.
I want to get into the CEO stuff, but my final question, just real quick on the agency side. How important is it that the agency has like a full blown team with like middle managers and org structure, or does that not really bother you if it's just like them and a few VAs?
That's a good question. It kind of depends on what it is they're fulfilling, but I guess the answer is, we want them to have a little bit more people than they need, so they've got some
They
capacity
have
to
a
grow.
bench.
So, it could be, with agencies, sometimes they all typically have similar margins, like kind of the 30 to 40% margins. But if there's a business that's doing 10 million revenue and 1 million in profit, you can assume they've got a bunch of team members already that can fulfill everything. Whereas if a business is doing 500K revenue and 300K profit, like, it's going to be just them and a few freelancers. And so
Yeah, yeah.
we're very comfortable hiring for our portfolio companies. So it's not really, we just kind of take it at face value, like, okay, what is this agency? We want to know who's running the operations. Do we need to hire an operator, like maybe set from the CEO, if the CEO is going to be focused on sales and marketing and stuff? Often, so what I was going at before is, a lot of, because these are the great first businesses for people. Often the operations and the back end is just a bit of a shit show, because people are like first time entrepreneurs. They don't know what they're doing. They use cash accounting, and they don't really know what they're doing. So we often see an opportunity to come in and improve both the quality of the product and the margins by using our own best practices that we use in our other agencies. So it's less of a concern. It's more about the founder reliance and the concentration of clients. That's the big one.
That makes sense. What you said there about bringing in a CEO, that kind of brings me into the other part of the interview I really wanted to discuss with you, because this is a concept I see a lot with holdco entrepreneurs such as yourself, where they look to buy an asset and effectively put in an operator, almost like a general manager, well, CEO of that business. And how many have you hired now? You've hired like 10 CEOs?
Yeah, I mean, at the moment we've got probably 4 or 5 working within our portfolio, and we've had a couple of, like, a little bit of attrition and stuff. So we've probably
I
hired 10
see.
historically. Yeah.
Okay, cool. I feel like a lot of people who want to do what you're doing, they hear that and that they think, one, that sounds awesome, someone who can run this business I bought. And two, that sounds very expensive. And three, how could I ever get a CEO type to work for me? So walk me through this type of stuff. Like, how difficult is it to find these people? I'm assuming you're looking for them as you are doing your due diligence on the deal you're looking to acquire to try to shorten that
Yeah.
gap as much as possible.
Yeah. And now that we've done it so many times, we've kind of got a subs bench, or like usually the top three candidates for a job you would hire, but you only hire one of them. So then when you buy your next business, you've got two prime candidates who are hopefully still around and still looking for an opportunity. And then, maybe and meanwhile, somebody else is like, oh, hey, I saw that job opportunity too late. Like, I'd be interested. And so right now, if I wanted to hire a new CEO for an acquisition, I'd probably have 4 or 5 people that I would message and say, hey, if you're still looking, come apply for this. And then you get, all the other people in as well. I do think one flaw that entrepreneurs have is we're like, why would anybody talented and skillful want to work for another company? Why would they not do their own thing? Why would somebody awesome like me want to work for somebody else? And I think there's a lot more people like that than there are like us. And not to put you on the spot, but you're a talented person and you're happy working for another company. And there's a
Don't
lot more
assume
people
these things,
like,
Dom. Don't assume I have talent.
okay, don't, I think you can say don't assume that you're happy, but
Well, I write tragic poetry. That should be a given, Dom. Have you seen my Facebook post?
yeah, but it used to be a lot darker.
I got to bring it back, man.
My point here is that there's a lot more people like you than there are like me in the world, and so I think entrepreneurs are just like slightly. I don't know if arrogant's the word, but we're slightly wrapped up in our own identities as entrepreneurs, and it's like, why would anybody like? It's almost insulting to our own employees. It's like, anyone who's
Yeah.
an employee is clearly not good enough, and it's like most of us became entrepreneurs because we kind of sucked in the real world. And so we're like, well, got to figure out another way of making money. And so there's a ton of people out there who didn't suck. And those people would love to come and work for another company. The other thing is we give people stock options, we give people autonomy, we give them structure. It's actually pretty lonely being an entrepreneur. So we give people an environment where they can come and run a business and get support and not have the stress of making payroll, but they can still have their own thing to sink their teeth into, where when they're in the shower they're thinking about like our business, like as in us and them, not as in Onfolio. And yeah, no, so in terms of, are there people out there, there's more than you would think. Yeah.
Just real quick on that, I'm glad you brought up the entrepreneurial like arrogance or hubris a bit, because in my perception, like the most valuable type of business to buy is where the founder is completely useless because their employees are like way better than them. So
Yeah.
I met like so many people over the last 2 years that sold a business for like over 100 million, just like different masterminds and stuff. And the most common trend was like, I don't know how to do a lot of stuff in my own business anymore because like they've delegated so much out to these people who are very, very talented employees of theirs. But to your point on the like failing at the job thing, like I failed at most of my jobs as well. EF is like the only one I haven't because it's a pretty unique company. But like most entrepreneurs I met, when I asked them like, how did you become an entrepreneur? There's always this common thread. One day my manager did X and I had enough. Like managers are the great creator of entrepreneurs, it seems.
Sure. Yeah. So just don't hire the managers.
Yeah. Let's talk about
Yeah.
so how are you finding these guys? Like what's your recruiting pipeline for a CEO? How do you even start the process?
Yeah. I mean, I think one thing a lot of people do wrong is they don't put enough effort into marketing their own company from a recruitment standpoint. So, for example, I have 3 buckets for everything I do. So, I'll go on a podcast like the Empire Flippers Opportunity
Happy to
podcast,
be
for example,
part
and
of a bucket for you, buddy.
I'm trying to really, I'm trying to build up my authority and share my knowledge and, just chat with a friend. But at the same time, there's 3 things I'm trying to tick off. Like I'm trying to present Onfolio as a wonderful company so that people go and buy our shares. I'm trying to present Onfolio as a wonderful company for selling your company to. So somebody's like, hey, maybe I'll go reach out to them. And I'm trying to present my company as a wonderful company for people to come and work for. And something like Empire Flippers is great because it's really got that Venn diagram where it ticks all the boxes. But some, other ones, it's different. Like when I'm speaking at Chiang Mai SEO, there's going to be SEO agencies there who see me speaking in the audience, and they might be like, "Oh yeah, I might. That guy seems cool. I like his dad jokes. Maybe I can sell him my business one day. Maybe he's hiring someone. I can go work for him. Or maybe, yeah, like maybe I can go short his stock because his jokes were so bad." But it's not always the case that you get the ability to hit three things at once. And some podcasts, it's just about raising money. Other podcasts, it's about deal flow. And other podcasts, it's about recruitment. But the same is true of my social media. Like when I'm sharing stuff on Twitter or LinkedIn, there's always a view to who is this for. But outside of that, we actually have a lot of success recruiting on LinkedIn or from our email list or places like Dynamite Jobs. And so the challenge is the best people are typically already in jobs and are typically not browsing job sites. So you're not always going to find the best people. But at the same time, there's people who are between jobs or who are thinking of making a switch or just got laid off, but they're still an excellent person. So we always post on those places as well. I think the
I heard it
key
interesting.
is just being
Oh,
able to
sorry, go
write a
ahead.
good job post as well. Like a sales pitch is your job post should be a sales pitch.
Yeah, I feel like enough people view hiring as a marketing funnel. So I'm 100% with you on that. One interesting thing, I don't know if you've ever tried this. I heard it from another friend. He has quite a few talented people that he's kind of like poached over the years. He'll look for people that are like a position one or two down from the role he's looking to hire for, like say CEO, maybe like the guy was a COO or director of sales or something like that, and they'll reach out to those guys. So then, like, yeah, they're in a comfortable job, but like, hey, here's your step up if you wanted. Have you ever tried anything like that before?
I haven't. I don't want to say it's on my to-do list because then people won't trust me, but I know Andrew Wilkinson talks about that a lot and it seems like a very logical way to do it. Yeah, I haven't done that yet.
Cool. I'd be curious. I'm fascinated with the hiring the CEO stuff. So once you hire a CEO, like tell me about their onboarding. So at this point, you're doing due diligence on the business, you're hiring a CEO. I'm assuming you buy the business roughly, like ideally around the same time you hire the CEO. And then you're doing training with that seller, is like you and the new CEO. Like walk me through that.
Yeah, I mean, in an ideal situation, we've thought about having the potential CEO become involved in the due diligence, but it's challenging because they're like kind of talking their own book a little bit. Like, they're going to be like, yeah, this is great business. You should totally buy it and hire me to run it.
They definitely
they're
hire me
not
for
gonna
it.
they're not gonna say this is a bad business. And also, to be fair, most good CEOs don't know how to do due diligence on a business.
Yeah.
They know how
Yeah. I
to
mean,
run a
very few
business.
people
So
ever
it's
buy a business in this world. So,
yeah. I mean, you guys noticed that when you did your first round of when Web Street was EF Capital. I think you did a blog post being like, "Here are our learnings from the first round," and you were
yeah.
like, oh, good operators are not necessarily good acquirers. So, they know how
Yep.
to run these businesses, but they don't know how to pick one. And I was kind of like, yeah, no shit. But, you have
That
to,
was
you have to
that
learn that.
was surprising to us. It's funny. There's one operator, I think it's Mashfiq, who he actually has raised money and acquired businesses before he did Web Street, and he's killing it in Web Street. I believe his portfolio is like one of the better ones. And I had him on the podcast. He's like, "Man, yeah, this Web Street stuff is amazing because I hated raising money. Like I don't have to do anything but just do like the due diligence on the business." But yeah, the other operators, they're like great at generating traffic, great at conversions, not so great at diligence.
Yeah. And, I said no shit, but it's just because I found that out the hard way as well. It's like they're just two completely separate skills. So, what we'll do is once we get far enough along where we think, okay, yeah, I'm going to buy this business, like the seller likes the price, we like each other, and we're far enough along in the due diligence that we haven't seen any flags or something like that, we will at this point maybe the asset purchase agreement is being written by the lawyers, and if it's a large enough business we actually have to do a public audit as well. So while that's going on and we're pretty confident the deal's going to go ahead, then we'll start looking for CEOs. And so we'll create a job posting, we'll go out to people that we have interviewed before and encourage them to apply, and even maybe sometimes the team of the company you're buying know that there's a sale happening, so you can see if any of them would like to apply. But usually the founder hasn't told the team yet, which is just kind of is what it is. But
Yeah.
and so while it's all ongoing, we'll find a candidate, and at some point we'll show the candidates, hey, this is the actual business that you would be running. Are you still interested? Do you have any problems? And tell us what you would do to run it. Do like a tear down of the business, sign up for the funnels and stuff like that. And then they'll start to become involved in some of the operational calls with the exiting founder and our COO, who will be saying, okay, start teaching us about the business. And then, yeah, there'll be like a transition period where basically the exiting founder is teaching our C suite or someone from our C suite, usually Adam, our COO, and the incoming founder, like the incoming CEO, how to run the business. And then maybe there's like a 60-day period where they're kind of co running it. Really depends on what we can negotiate and so on. But that's the rough how it
When you're
kind of
hiring
works.
a CEO, are there like, so you've hired 10, you have roughly four or so running for you. So I'm assuming at least one of those was a bad hire. So I'm sure you've had a lot of like learning experience over this, right? Like in terms of like common traits of success, what do you see with a CEO? Is it like culture fit? Is it skill? They were working for a business similar to the one you're buying. Like what type of things are you looking for here that like the success clues, if you will?
It's usually experience and management skills. So it really depends what we want with the business as well. Like, for example, when we bought Proofread Anywhere, the course business, it's really a marketing play. So a CEO needs to have good marketing skills, whereas an agency is usually more of a sales gig. So you want like a sales focused CEO. But the mistakes we've made over the years are hiring marketers really who they're like, oh, I'm going to change this, I'm going to fix that, I'm going to do all these things. Like the funnel's really bad, I'm going to put in a better funnel, I'm going to hire someone to scale the paid media. And usually, the longer list of things they have, the more of a flag it becomes because the more mature and experienced CEOs understand it's more like turning a steamship than a speedboat. And so they'll be more reserved about what they're going to do when they take over, which is also what we want. And they'll be a little bit more, they'll say stuff like, we'll say, how quickly can you implement these things? And they'll say stuff like, well, depends how quickly it takes me to gel with the team. Is there anyone that I don't get along with? Is there anyone who's been like on autopilot that maybe needs to be replaced? Things are going to break in the first few weeks. So how long is it going to take me to understand that and to fix them? And, when somebody's saying this, it's like, yeah, that's a good hire, as opposed to someone who gets really excited about like, I'm going to design a new logo and I'm going to, I mean, sometimes they need a new logo, but it's really about, yeah, like how kind of pragmatic they are in their planning.
That is such a good lesson in terms of like accepting it for like not just CEO, but really any position. And I think especially true for marketers. Like I remember when I first began, I wanted to do insane stuff with EF in terms of like insane funnels, all these like tripwires, upsells, cross sells, downsells, all this like stuff that marketers love to think about, right? But now that I'm more grizzled with my wounds of experience, I realize the best marketing is simplicity. So like don't overthink it. Like simplicity scales, complexity fails. Like there was a period at EF where if you went through every single email trigger possible in the setup I had, I would literally be sending you valuable content for over a year and a half, or no, over 2.5 years, because of the way I'd written so much in the email ecosystem. And I thought this was brilliant because the sell cycle was about 250 days. So with our longest one being about 560 days, like this would cover the entire sell cycle. All this stuff is brilliant, and it didn't remove the needle, and it broke so often. I was like, why did I do this? This was stupid. So I
Yeah.
agree. I think marketers get a little bit like, especially newer marketers, they get too overexcited. And in non-marketers, I see this often where, like, say they're struggling with something, and they come up with what they think is a brilliant marketing idea, but a wizened marketer is like, I don't know about this. But they just have those magic eyes, like, oh, if I just turn on this ad, I'm going to get revenue, right? Like, or you might lose 50K.
Right. Yeah. And I think a good CEO just goes out and hires a VP of marketing. I think that's the best
That's the real
sweet
play. Yeah,
spot.
yeah.
Yeah, and we've definitely had some candidates that we nearly hired, and we thought actually they would make a really good VP of marketing. So yeah, it's just unfortunately you just have to learn these lessons the hard way, and like maybe the fifth or sixth time you get the message.
Uh,
So that's how we've kind of evolved, and who knows, maybe we'll change what we optimize for again. Maybe in the future we're going to go back to hiring growth hackers or something. But for now, this is how we do it.
Let's introduce some .com secrets, some Hormozy-ness to our
Yeah,
courses.
you'll see me handing out business cards at Funnel Hackers Live or something.
I'm
Yeah,
sure there's a lot of good businesses there actually to buy that
there
and
are.
go
Yeah.
high level if you're looking for agencies. I think those communities are, pretty interesting to target. We're coming up on time, Dom, but I wanted to quickly talk about your deal structure and then ask you my famous three here at the end of the podcast. But when you're doing a business, I know all of them are unique, and it's hard to make some general assumptions here. But in general, what kind of deal structure do you like to do at Onfolio? Like gives us the seller a reasonable exit while also mitigating your own risk.
We have a board, so the board are always like keen on having as much downside protection as possible, but at the
Yep.
same time they are they're realistic. They understand the market. They know it's not like a private equity 10% down and the rest over 30 years type thing. So they're smart. So we really, it does vary, and sometimes we'll do those multi-pronged offers like I described earlier, where it's like you can have no earnout but less upfront, or an earnout and more upfront. One thing we've been having a little bit of success with in some of our current negotiations is we have a preferred share that comes with a 12% dividend, and a lot of sellers are interested in taking some of the consideration in preferred shares. So, let's say we were buying someone's business for 4 million, maybe we give them 1 million upfront, 2 million of preferred shares, so that they're going to be earning 240k a year just off that, and they can sell the shares at some point if they want to as well, and then 1 million as an earnout or as a seller note. And 2 years ago, nobody was taking that kind of thing. Everyone was like, nope, I need
Cash.
5x and I need 100% cash up front. Whereas now, I think sellers are learning that valuations are driven by the availability of capital. And so when the cost of capital of the acquirer goes up, the valuations go down and the amount of cash that they're willing to deploy goes down. So realistically, sellers need to understand that they need to take less cash up front now. But we have this kind of unique ability to give people shares. That means we don't have to deploy as much cash, but they can do very well with it as well. But aside from that, we don't do anything particularly unique. We'll use an earnout where we think there's sufficient risk that warrants an earnout, and we'll do a seller note where a seller's willing to take a note, and we'll pay more if that's the case. And then, yeah, there's always some level of cash up front as well.
I guess one quick question that probably doesn't have a quick answer. So sellers in our market, they still are, I think, a little bit high on the 2020, 2021 type of valuations. That's starting to like shake down. They're starting to realize. But a lot of sellers, they're thinking like, you know what, I'm just going to wait for the next wave of like big capital rushing in. And I've told them like I'm positive that's not going to happen again. Like you had 14, 15, actually I think it was $16 billion from like the aggregators that are hyping up acquisitions, who almost all of them have committed seppuku at this point. Like they're not looking very hot.
Yeah.
So all that capital is just gone. And then you also had the black swan event of COVID and like historically low interest rates. So like maybe it could come back, but I've been telling sellers I think that is somewhat foolish if you want to make a life changing exit, because that might be like 10 years before another storm like that happens. Like, what are your thoughts on that?
Capital's not going to become available at the rates that would lead to that kind of frothy marketplace until at least 2025. Like, we're going to need to see interest rates go down to like 3.5% before banks start lending more loosely, and the cost of capital goes down into like say 7% for buyers and stuff. And so they just aren't going to be able to underwrite paying like 5x for a lot of businesses. I do think there will be another run, but if someone wants to sell their business, like, the market risk they carry by holding onto their business for 2 or 3 years in the hope that they'll be able to sell it for like a frothy price in 2026 versus the risk of their business dying. Plus, they can take that money, invest it somewhere else, and grow it that way, over the same period of time. So if somebody's got a large chunk of their net worth in their business, which most sellers do, I think it's irresponsible to hold in the hopes of valuations coming up again in the future. That being said, I buy people's businesses, so take what I say with a grain of salt. Uh, you know,
I sell people's businesses. Take my word as gospel. Come on into the evaluation tool, please, audience. I agree with you, man. I think de-risking yourself by selling your business is very, very smart. I also think the best time to sell a business is also the time that entrepreneurs don't want to sell it, because that's usually when things are going up and to the right and everything is great. Like, oh, I can, push out another easy 10, 20% of my valuation. But like, in my view, that's the best time to sell. Like, you're leaving money on the table, but it's also so attractive to the buyer versus like your business is stagnated or even worse, decline. Like, okay, now I reached like this higher number, so I should get a bigger valuation. But now the business is declining, so your actual multiple is probably worse, and it's going to be harder to make the deal happen. So that's kind of my view on it. I think if you can sell a business to hit your personal business goals like faster, I think it's usually a pretty smart move instead of like risking it by holding on to it.
yeah, and I do often see this kind of spiral of death with businesses as well, where let's say somebody's business is making 1 million a year, and they want to sell it for 5 million, but the market will support 4 million or something. So they'll hold it on and be like, I'll sell it more when I grown it. But they've anchored that like 4 to 5 million price in their head. And then I don't know, something happens, the business goes down. Now it's only making 800K a year, and they're not going to sell it now because they're like, well, okay, I'll get it back to 1 million and then I'll sell it. And then they start throwing bad money after the business, trying to make it grow. And then
Yep. Yep.
it just spirals all the way down because they get emotional about it. So it's often better to sell in an uptrend than kind of wait until you're panicking,
100%.
and you'll get more
You're
money
going
for it anyway.
Yeah, and it'll happen a lot faster versus like 8 months. It might take you 2 months if you have an attractive offer like that, right? Well, cool,
Exactly, yeah.
man. We're at the end of the podcast. I always ask 3 questions. This is my lightning round. Are you ready?
Yes.
All right. You got to answer these questions good, Dom. Otherwise, I'm not going to publish this podcast. So I'm kidding.
What a
I'm
waste of
kidding.
an
I
hour.
joke. What? Waste an hour? I'm your best friend. What do you mean? I am never going to sell you another business. All right. Lightning round. What are the best hidden investment opportunities in your view in the online business world today?
I think there's a lot of like app marketplaces, for example, let's say Figma apps or WordPress plugins, or to a lesser extent, like things like Zoom apps and stuff, where they have a lot of like Chrome plugins and extensions where they have pretty good recurring revenue, pretty sticky customer base, and there's just no established market for buyers or sellers out there. So that there's probably some pretty good mispricing there. The other, I think, and we're actually thinking of starting a fund for doing this, but you can take minority ownership in online businesses because a lot of the best businesses are not for sale, and you can diversify yourself a lot and not need to hire a CEO. If instead of invested 100% in a business, you could invest 20% in 5 businesses. So I think that's an interesting area to explore.
And you structure it just where your holding company would get like a dividend from the minority equity.
Yeah, it'll be like maybe like a similar like fund type structure, and then
Gotcha.
it wouldn't be like a side thing for me. It would be like the profits we get would accrue to Onfolio. Exactly.
Cool. Cool. I like that concept. There's pros and cons of that, of course, but it does allow you to diversify a lot quicker. All right, next question. What tools or resources would you recommend to entrepreneurs to grow their online business?
I think tools and resources always come and go. I think really your own sort of curiosity, and you kind of have to source a lot of different noise for people describing what things are working and what strategies you can do, and then you have to kind of pick a few different things to test for yourself and see what works, but you have to understand that most of them are probably not going to work, otherwise you'll get disappointed.
Yeah, you'll grow cynical very quickly running some marketing campaigns after a few times. All right, man. So, my final question for you, and if not the most important question, what has been your funniest moment since you started being a digital entrepreneur?
Yeah, I was looking at this one. It was really hard for me to actually think of a funny funny moment in my entrepreneurial life because it's usually either super exciting or super stressful. But I think, to be honest, I just think going to conferences and hanging out with friends and having a good time really takes the edge off the entrepreneurial grind. And so I can't think of a particular funny moment, but like hanging out at the Chiang Mai SEO conference, for example, is always really good fun and is really funny as well. So not a particular anecdote for you. I'll save that one for beers. But yeah, I think my best moments have just been hanging out with industry peers in person and having a good time.
Yeah, I agree. I enjoy doing that stuff too. I'm looking forward to seeing you and check my SEO. I guess we'll see each other at DCBKK too, since I'll be going there. But I'm emceeing at Chiang Mai SEO, so come and give me a standing ovation. I'll come and give you a standing ovation. We'll do a trade off, a
Oh
link
yeah, sweet.
exchange.
Have you finished your slides yet?
Well, I'm just emceeing, so I don't have to do anything, which like I kind of prefer being a presenter because I feel like I have more control over what I say because I practice the speech and all that stuff versus the MC. I'm just like let's see what I say. Like in the moment. Like maybe it'll
That's
be good,
that's
maybe it'll be bad.
that's how I do my presentations as well, so it's fine.
I'm excited to catch up again, man. For anyone that wants to connect with you after this podcast, what's the best place to do that for them?
Probably on Twitter or LinkedIn. Yeah, my Twitter is just at Dom Wells Onfolio. Follow me or DM me or whatever. That's a good place to chat and to just get exposed to a bit more of my kind of thought leadership and my content and stuff. But I also have a newsletter, which I forgot about, which is just onfolio.com/newsletter. And I'm only a couple of articles into that one, but I'm enjoying writing it. So that's a cool,
Awesome,
cool
man.
place as well.
Awesome. Well, I'm glad you came on, man. Always a pleasure to catch up. For anyone listening, I've been friends with Dom for a very long time. Really cool entrepreneur to follow. So definitely go check him out on social media, join his newsletter. Well, Dom, thanks for coming on, man.
Yeah, thanks for having me. It's been good.
There you have it. I hope you enjoyed it. I hope it got you inspired at all the different things that are happening in this industry. And of course, if you just want to buy a highly profitable business, you can always go to empireflippers.com/marketplace. Or maybe you want to make an exit of your highly profitable business, and you could go to empireflippers.com/sell your site. I've been your host, Greg. If you enjoyed this episode, make sure you leave a review, give us a like, a follow, share it across social media. Talk to you all soon. See you on the next episode.